All right, so welcome to this webinar. Thank you very much for dialing in. Before we start, just some information. As always, I want to invite you to use Twitter. So you can find us on Twitter via @LeanIX_net. And if you want to tweet about this webinar, we have a hashtag #QuickStartEA. So always invited to also comment on this one. Our topic today, ready for enterprise architecture liftoff in 30 minutes. So the goal of this webinar is to give you an introduction about how we believe you can really get a quick start with enterprise architecture. And to do that, we'll share a couple of principles, our philosophy, how we believe that is possible, and also show you a couple of use cases to make this very transparent. So what I want you to take away from this webinar after you go away, I think the first point is really to understand what principles are needed to have a quick start with enterprise architecture. And basically, what we don't want to have in the end is a long winding project where stuff is defined, where a lot of data is collected, and for a long time, no results are actually presented. So we'll discuss a couple of principles, how you can make sure that enterprise architecture is really outcome driven, that you really deal with enterprise architecture in an agile way, because that's what's now the requirement for enterprise architecture. The digital transformation requires corporate IT to be more agile, and with enterprise architecture you can only contribute to this if you also become more agile. Second point is I'd like to present a couple of enterprise architecture use cases that help you to get started quickly. So use cases that I see in practice quite often for companies that just get started or that want to make quick progress. So all of these use cases, they are fairly easy to implement. You don't need a lot of data for them, and you can generate results quickly. And thirdly, of course, also you should, in case we always have people in the webinars that are new to LeanIX, so the webinar should also help you to find your way around LeanIX, so to understand the basic concepts, and in case you want to ask for your free trial, it should give you a quick start that you know how everything works already. Just one more word, if you have questions during this webinar, please always feel free to use the chat function that you see in your webinar client, and I'll go over them. In the end, if we don't have time to answer all of them, I'll provide some answers via email. Good. So let's dive right into it. How can we achieve it that we get started with enterprise architecture quickly, and even more importantly, also generate results quickly? The first principle is use case driven. What do we mean by that? A use case is a specific problem you want to solve. For example, you want to identify and manage the applications that are at risk due to technology obsolescence. So you need information about applications that are based on outdated technology. So this is a clear use case. You focus on one question and you focus on the data you need to actually solve this one use case. And the second one, and that goes hand in hand with the first one, you really focus your efforts on results. So having also your maybe target audience in mind, you would have a clear picture in mind where you basically starting with the end in mind first. What needs to come out? What picture do I need to draw? How will my recommendation look? And only starting from there, you'll collect the data that's necessary to derive this recommendation. And thirdly, you only would collect the data if you collect it manually. If it's automatically, it's a bit different. But if you want to manually collect data, you would only collect data that you actually need to solve your use case. So you would start with the use case in mind, think back, what information do I need to solve my questions, and then collect the data that I need to do that. Rather than just collecting a lot of data and then looking into the data if you can make any sense of it, or like collecting a lot of data that will be never used and therefore will also be not maintained properly in the system. Yeah, let's go through an example that makes this hopefully a bit more clearer. And we start with a simple example. You may know this method here. It's a 2x2 matrix where we see the applications in the middle, and we have two axes. The one is with a technical fit and the other one with a functional fit. And these parameters can help you to answer questions like applications that have a bad functional fit, so they don't actually support the business very well in what they do, and that also have a bad technical fit, so like they're technically not very fit, maybe they're too slow or they're not stable. That can help you to identify applications where you should invest or where you actually should divest. So it's very clear what you need to answer, and you have kind of a picture in mind where you're going. So what do you need to solve this problem? So basically you would now say, well, I need measures how I rate these applications. So I need some kind of rating for the technical fit and functional fit. And that's how I would base my recommendation on it. And this already also gives you the data you need to collect. And you would restrict the data to what you minimally need to solve the problem. So if you're tasked to come up with recommendations for the HR application portfolio, where to invest, where to divest, you would only collect the information for your HR portfolio and not for all applications. And having this end in mind where you want to go, you will clearly already see here what you need to collect. In this example, you would need to have the applications and you would need a rating like the functional fit and the technical fit. So, and that's it. So you wouldn't collect any more data because you just want to do what you actually need to solve this use case. Okay. What I want to do next is go over a couple of use cases in LeanIX that I see in practice that are use cases that are most commonly interesting for companies that are starting with the lean enterprise architecture approach, and also that provide like a lot of benefit without investing too much effort initially. So those are use cases that you can implement fairly quickly, and still they help you to realize a lot of quick wins in the beginning. Those are the three that are highlighted here. The first one being application portfolio management. What does that mean? Like in the very simple case, you would like maybe just to understand which applications do I have out there. which business do they support, so what are they actually doing, and maybe having something like a simple rating, how critical are they, how good are they in shape, like we saw before. So this would be application portfolio management. Integration architecture management, the goal of this is to understand how applications work together. And if you see here, that's always, we call it in LeanIX, fact sheets, if you're not yet familiar with this concept. So each application, each interface would be a fact sheet. And as you see here, for this use case, we would, for example, add interfaces to understand how applications belong together, which data flow between them, and which data objects are manipulated by the applications and go via the interface. And the third one, like very commonly, is a CIO, for example, might want to have an understanding how risky is my application landscape actually. So he would need a picture, maybe a heat map, where he sees some red spots of applications that are running on outdated technology and needs to understand what it actually means. So these are 3 use cases, as said before, that can be implemented fairly easy. And that's what we are looking at right next. So I switch to my browser. In case you don't know LeanIX yet, just a quick overview. LeanIX, we have 3 tabs. The news section here, that's basically what you maybe also know from LinkedIn or Facebook. It's a news stream, what happened in the system since you logged in last. We have the inventory. Inventory, this is where all the data is put in a structured way. So you have all the information, the fact sheets, how we call it, in here, and you would filter for your appropriate view. And lastly, the reporting. Here we have a lot of standard reports that enable a quick start for enterprise architecture. So all the reports, they are already pre-built, and you just need to fill your inventory with the fact sheets to have these reports come up. And how that works, that's what I explain next. So maybe let's start with a use case that I already showed on the slides. You're starting out with enterprise architecture, and your CIO tasks you to provide you an overview of the HR application portfolio. So as we said before, we're only looking at the data that's interesting right now. So I can filter this view now for HR, because those applications are all linked to the HR capability. And that's the picture that I want to draw in the end. That's the picture I want to show to my CIO. Maybe I will even export it as PDF for him or share it in LeanIX with him. So to make this decision, we look at the functional fit and the technical fit, and that's why I also have already selected this view here. So the axes are technical fit and functional fit. And that's already showing me which data I will need to complete to draw this picture in the end. So I need, of course, the application, and I need a form of rating for the applications. How do I get this data? And that's where I jump to the inventory. And again, only looking at HR for now. So I start with a list of applications, quite simply. I could enter them manually if you start out. This could be an easy way to just enter the fact sheets and enter the applications that are in scope for your actually problem right now. Or if you have a lot of companies, they might have some initial Excel data, so you can import it or also automate that via our REST API. And you'll get a list with your applications. If I click now into one application, let's take this one. You'll see a lot of information, but right now I just am interested in basically remember the two dimensions of the matrix, the overall functional fit. This would be something you can change here, and the technical fit. But how do you now get this information? In our philosophy, you as an enterprise architect or responsible for enterprise architecture shouldn't just decide that basically from your desk. No, that's something a responsible for this application should fill. And responsible would be put here. So now in this example, we just have an application owner. Maybe your setup would be more complex. You might maybe have a business owner that could determine the functional fit, and you have a technical responsible that could assess the technical fit. So it could, of course, now maybe do a workshop and have these ratings just completed. Another possibility is we have a new add-on, the survey add-on, and you could easily prepare a survey and just send it to the responsible person for the HR systems and have them do the rating just here. So they could just easily click here and complete the information here. So no need to even bother for the other information, just information you need for this one small use case. Yes, and basically if you now have completed this information, the picture I've shown before will show up, and you have already your first implications drawn. You have seen we have a couple of applications that rank really bad on both dimensions. If I go back to HR again, click on that. So they are not very well from a functional perspective and neither from a technical. And you could think about getting rid of some, and also your next job as an enterprise architect then is what to do. Should there be a successor? When should we phase it out? That would be then the next steps. Second use case, a related use case, also related to the business support. Let's stick with our HR example for a moment. And after you have now first overview of your HR application landscape, you want to go in a bit more detail. So you want to understand in your global organization who's actually using which tool, and does that make sense? And for that, I have this very classical enterprise architecture view open here, the application matrix. So it shows you who the user group is using which application to do what. So we have here a couple of capabilities we have in HR, like for example, recruiting. And looking at this, as an enterprise, a couple of things will come to mind. Probably first one would be, why are here certain gaps for skills enhancement in Australia? Why they're not using a tool they have, for example, in Europe? Would it make sense to roll this out? Decision by you. And again, after having analyzed that, you would also become active and say, okay, let's roll this out to here. And we would see that we also can implement these changes in the system. A second question could be, why do we have this zoo of applications here? Everybody is using a different tool and which one would be a good tool to use going forward to support employee lifecycle management. And for that, I could change the view and say, how good is my functional fit? What's actually a good tool for this capability? And could identify then, for example, this HR tool in Brazil. It doesn't seem to be very reasonable for what it's supposed to do. So maybe we will bring Brazil also on our standard HR admin tool. While it's not perfect, at least it's not unreasonable. So this would be a second use case around application portfolio management. Now let's switch gears a bit, and let's say we have a new stakeholder on the horizon. Your CISO approaches you, so your Chief Information Security Officer, and he has some questions about data protection. He's concerned which applications actually use a certain data object that's related to employees. How could we get such a view? Again, we think about which picture we want to have in the end. And we start with the data object, employee. So just typing here, and can also find some here, have employee, and also employee time, which is also of interest. So another question was which applications are related to this data object. And I can do a simple, I'd rather do a drill down. So I can do a simple drill down from the data object to the application that shows me the information that's requested. And again, like coming back to our initial topic that we said, just related to the use case, I just want to understand which application is manipulating a certain data object. So again, I need to understand or think back, what data do I need to get this? And I can see this in the fact sheet, employee, and I need the relations to the application. So that's where the data is actually coming. So again, you could collect a lot more data around this, but already this view, understanding which application is manipulating critical employee data, is worth a lot to understand your security better. And of course, I could go further here. If I go back to the visualizer, could also do then in the next step more, let's say, advanced analysis that I say, okay, certain data object, it's used by certain applications and they support the business unit X or the business capability X. So again, I could quickly answer questions like employee data object, which business capability responsibles do I actually need to talk to if I want to get a better understanding what they're doing. So the next point would be that we also see is a common use case when starting with enterprise architecture. It's to better understand how my applications interact with each other, how are the dependencies between them. And that's something we can see in the data flow. I open just one up now. And you could be tasked to prepare the integration of a new time tracking software. Again, we are staying with the HR example. And a view like this showing applications, interfaces between them, the data objects that go over there and their direction would be very helpful to actually understand the current time tracking software. Where does it actually put data? Where is it connected to get an understanding what kind of interfaces would go away, which new interfaces would be created. So that's another use case where you also can start with such a picture in mind and actually think then back, okay, what do I need to create this use case? And again, that's not too much information. Having an application, interface between two applications, and for example, in addition, the data object. But maybe in the first step, even the relation between applications and interface without any further information could be a huge step forward to get a better view on your integration architecture. I want to close with one last use case, which I think is also very interesting in investigating and improving your risk management. Let's have a look at the heat map. So say you need to get better understanding of the risk you have in your application landscape. I just switched the view here. And you see, again, this picture, very management ready, that you say, in customer management, I have 4 red spots, naming 4 applications are red. That's just the message you want to have in the end. That's what your stakeholder needs to do a decision, because then he can decide, well, that's fine for me for customer management if there's a bit of risk, but it wouldn't be okay for finance because we have reporting needs, so we can't have any risk there. And having this end in mind, again, we would then work backwards and say, what data do I actually need? And again, I will show you where the information is coming from. I have this call center management application. It was red. And it is red because it's built on software that is end of life. You see it here. The life cycle actually already ended end of 2014. So that's how it works together. Application is built on technology. So it's a very intelligent view to manage your technology risk. So that's it for the tool demo. Let me quickly go back to the slides. To wrap up and summarize, what I'd like you to take away is, even today you can start thinking about the problems you actually need to solve. So what information will help you to solve that problem? What picture would help you? So really start with the end in mind, and only based on that information start collecting data. If you do that, I think you can make fairly quick progress in collecting data and, more importantly, deliver some results. So all the use cases presented today, they have the potential to deliver quick results. So you could find some applications that are not longer used, save a couple of euros or dollars on license costs, so to present some quick results. And then working from there, clients typically do one of two things. They either go deeper on the use cases that were initially interesting. So for the integration architecture I showed, you could then go in more depth, say, better understand, are there any inconsistencies in the data management? Is like information created at multiple places, which doesn't make sense. Or second alternative, you could widen to further use cases. So companies, they might have started with like easy application portfolio management, and now they want to do cost management. So to basically get to more complex enterprise architecture use cases. That's it for today from my side. Just to also one more hint, we have a lot of interesting resources in our download section on the website. So in case you need more inputs, like have a look at the white papers. We have also a lot of materials that address the challenges of getting started, how to get value quickly out of EA there. And lastly, please get in touch. So if you have any more questions or want to discuss some of your challenges, write me an email, call us, or maybe see you at our next webinar, which is also coming up shortly in 2 weeks. Just a hint, that's German only at this point of time. But if you speak German, it might be very interesting to understand how the Internet of Things can be supported or made successful with enterprise architecture. Yeah, that's it for today. Thanks again for dialing in, and see you next time. Bye.